All right, third reading of bills.
House Bill 2190, an act amending Title 36, Arizona Vice Statutes by adding Chapter 16 relating to public health.
Members, you've all heard the third reading of House Bill 2190. Those in favor of the measure vote aye. Those opposed to vote no. The system is now open, and the Senate will now proceed to vote. Senator Alston, how do you vote on 2190?
Madam President, this is Leila Alston, and I vote no on House Bill 2190.
Thank you. Senator Gabaldon, how do you vote?
Senator Gabaldon, I vote no on HB 2190.
Thank you. Senator Alston and Gabaldon are both no's on 2190.
No.
Members, have you all voted? Senator Shope, you're on the board.
Very short. Thank you, Madam President. Rise to explain my vote.
Please do.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in opposition of House Bill 2190 in its current form. This bill has taken some turns. We've had discussions. We had a very spirited discussion, I'd say, among many members over the last several days, and I wish that more folks would have those discussions in person rather than social media and on the radio. But nevertheless, here we are with what we have in front of us because we couldn't come to an agreement. I was in favor of this bill and would have been a green name on that bill had the PACE number 1 floor amendment been put on. It is undoubtedly true that we would have been in better shape as a citizenry had the PACE number 1 amendment been put on and this bill been allowed to pass, go to the House and pass, and Governor Ducey be able to sign it. Now, we are in a situation where the bill won't even get out of this chamber, and I think that is a sad day. Now, let's go ahead and talk about, briefly, because I let my friend from Legislative District 11 know that I'd be brief, why I supported the number 1 and can't support this bill, and I've been consistent on this from day one without that amendment, and that is, I believe in private property rights. I believe in the rights of the sole proprietor, the barber who may be immunocompromised, who cannot get a vaccine and would just want to put a sign up in the front of their shop. This bill, in its current form, would have the heavy hand of government shut that business down and leave that individual without a livelihood, and that is something that I cannot stand for. And as somebody who's actually signed the front of a paycheck before that is in this body, I don't believe that anybody else that's a business owner out there should be faced with that decision. Friends, we have to go ahead, and I'll end with this, and realize that when we can get something passed in an incremental way that makes things better than they are today under current law, we should take that opportunity every single time, especially when we know that the path is set for the signature and for it to go on and become law. Friends, I would also say that when it's time to go ahead and get to negotiating I would encourage all of you, you've known me for 9 years, whether it's been here in this body or in the House, that we do so across the table and not on social media or other forms of media. With that, I vote no.
Thank you, sir. Senator Gowan, you're on the board.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to explain my vote.
Please do.
Thank you, Madam President. As you'll see the numbers up there, the vast majority of the party I am in actually believe in pushing this forward and making this a law, and there's a reason. I think we all believe in private property rights, but we also believe in the private individual rights. And I remember a time when our party had that as the #1 priority. And I still hold that near and dear to my heart when we talk about priorities. And the private individual right is the #1 priority here. You know, it talked about the bill won't get out of the chamber. Well, it is only as such when you look at the board where the numbers are that we have a vast majority of this party in favor. So I would say, and I would compel anybody up there that is a red or a no, that they would switch that vote so that we can move this forward, protect our citizenry. Anytime that you have to go into a business and the business can say, let me see your passport, show me what you've done, show me you've injected something in your arm. That is not proper. That is not private individual rights. That is the basic foundation of our society and why we created this great country. Businesses all the time are regulated, as I've stated before. We have planning and zoning, we have health, and we have safety issues. We have many more that we deal with businesses. What we're saying here is, do not force me to show you my papers so that I can get food, I can get clothes, and I can be comforted. That's what we're saying here. We talk about a free market, that is a free market. And that is why you see my name in the green and saying yes to this, Madam President. I would hope that we can reconsider and think about getting this over to the House and let them look at the issues that we're presenting here and make sure. I have to tell you, there is a big issue about getting the vaccinations. You know, I had COVID myself, as many of you know that. That is a natural vaccination. My son, it goes to the University of Arizona, and he is being asked to come off of the online school that he's done for a year. By the way, so you know, he got straight A's there. To come to school, he has to be vaccinated, is the dictation from that university. That is absolutely wrong. Wrong thinking, and that's the wrong way to go when we talk about individual private rights. And I'm appalled at it. It's his choice as a 25-year-old whether he wishes to get that or not. It is your right whether you get that or not. And if you're vaccinated and that's the belief you have, by being vaccinated, you cannot get it anymore, then why would you care if I do? What does that matter to you? You're vaccinated. So go, that's your choice, that's great. We all have those choices. Allow me my choice in this great country we live in. I am wholeheartedly behind this and believe in this, and that you have two factions where we talk about, yes, government should never tell you that, but why should a private business? And I just told you the reason why. Individual rights. And with that, Madam President, I vote aye.
Thank you, sir. Senator Leach, you're next up.
Thank you, Madam President. Rise to explain my vote.
Please do.
Thank you, Madam President. 2190 has had somewhat of an arduous path to making it on the board today. And to that end, I want to say thanks to my seatmate, Representative Brett Roberts, for the work that he's done here. He may not get the results he's looking for today, but let me assure the members in this body, it's not because he set a marker and said, this is where I'm going to be, and I won't move off that. He has had any number of meetings with several, including right up until probably 9:30 this morning, trying to come to some ground, the middle ground, that it would work for everybody. In fact, I can tell you from personal experience, he's worked with this member when this bill was first introduced and taking me through the twists and turns of what he was trying to do, what he was trying to accomplish. But let me assure you of one thing. He said, while I'm willing to move on issues, I have a floor. I have a base. And I can move left, right, up, down, but I have a base of information that I want in this bill. That's his right. That's his responsibility, not only to himself, but to the constituents of LD 11, which I share with him. And he set that floor, and I don't think that's been a secret to anybody of what his wishes, wants, and demands were in putting this bill together. Unfortunately, we weren't able to come there. What's the old saying? Bills are never dead until we sign and die. So there may be life, there may not be. He did not break his principles, and he did not break his promise to his constituents, to our constituents. I can tell you that, I don't know about your mailbox, but LD 11 people that didn't know where my email was certainly know now. And they use it freely, and I welcome that, because it is clear to me that the folks in LD 11 want this bill. Representing them, you will see that I'm green on this board, and I will be green as we go forward. I want to talk a little bit about something that was just mentioned by the previous speaker, and that's show me your papers. I had family that served in WW2, World War II, and we all know what show me your papers meant then. In 1970, I was privileged to be able to take a trip to the Soviet Union when the Soviet Union was still behind Iron Curtain. And we had passports and we had visas. And the first night in country, in a Russian city, we got off the bus and we checked into the hotel, and they took our papers. They take your papers, and your papers are kept behind the desk. You have no papers when you go out on the street. If you were to go out on the street without going back to the front desk and requesting your papers so that you could go onto the street. Did I live there forever? Did I have to live under that? No. But when you see that, when you get off the bus coming from a free country, you check in, you sign your name, and they say, give me your papers, you all of a sudden wake up to what that really means and what that really says. And that is the heart of individual freedom and the basis of our democracy and our republic. I support this bill, and I would ask each one of you on the floor that are red to reconsider your position and give your constituents what they are asking for. And with that, Madam President, I vote aye.
Thank you, sir. Senator Townsend, you're up next.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to explain my vote.
Please do.
Thank you. And I think it's really important that we understand that there's a difference between business rights and personal rights. I've heard so much about how businesses can say, well, no shoes, no shirt, no service. We talked earlier in caucus about this. Shoes having to do with liability. You don't want the patron to cut their feet on something on the floor. You have to have shoes. A shirt protects you from indecent exposure. Those are all things that do not have to do with a medical situation. Whether or not you should have to disclose your medical information to a business in order to patronize that business, I can't think of anything at the moment that would compare, that we would allow. I have a business and I want to know if you have AIDS or not because I'm a barber. I have a business and I want to know if you can walk in here or not because I don't like to have to accommodate for wheelchairs because then I can't put as much stuff in there and I have to make things wider. I don't like that. And so as a business owner, I have a right to have narrow aisles so I can fit more product and make more money. I don't want you in my business if you might have a seizure because you could fall and hit your head. So I need to know if you've been prescribed medication. Are you on medication? And have you been seizure-free for a year? Because if not, I could be liable and sued if you hit your head on something. So I want to know what's your status regarding your seizures. When else do we ask people to give their medical information in order to patronize a business? That business owner who has an immunocompromised situation. I have a daughter who has epilepsy. She wants to be a police officer. She cannot be because she can't drive the police car. She wants to be a nurse, but she can't do that either. And I could make a long list. Sometimes people who want to do a particular job, but because of their own personal situation, they cannot. So that doesn't persuade me. I feel sorry, but to require a person to give up their personal, private, medical information in order to patronize a business is discrimination. We talked about the power of the free market. It seems like we're going to have to rely on that at this point because this bill's not going to pass. So I want to communicate to those of you who are listening, there is power in the purse. I believe it was Qatar Airlines who announced that they were going to require vaccines in order for you to fly on their airline. They were the first one to do that, I believe. They immediately got backlash, and they very quickly changed that policy. So, people of Arizona, create the backlash. I was on social media saying I was going to be voting no on this bill so that I could reconsider it and bring it back on Monday, but I'm not willing to put my name up on this bill in red after thinking that through. So I apologize for not doing that, but I have to be listed as green on this bill. And finally, this is only half of the issue. Most of the people reaching out to me are saying, I'm going to get fired if I don't get a vaccine. Is my employer going to be able to terminate me if I don't get a vaccine? Those are the emails that I'm getting. So I would have preferred that this bill would have addressed the employer-employee relationship, but the sponsor committed to only dealing with the consumer side of things. So I just want to also mention that we should not give up on the issue of employer-employee relationships. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 says, once an employer receives notice that an employee's sincerely held religious belief, practice, or observance prevents them from taking the influenza vaccine, the employer must provide a reasonable accommodation unless it would pose an undue hardship as defined by Title VII. I propose, members and members of the public, that we just codify that language. We find a way to put that into statute that changes it from the influenza vaccine to the COVID-19 vaccine so that your employer is required, you don't have to go through litigation to force this, that your employer is required to provide for an exemption if you have one of these things listed here. So as we move forward with this bill failing, we should still continue to try to find solution. We should not go home without some kind of resolution. I know we can get this exemption done for the employer-employee relationship, and I would ask that we push forward at least with that. And with that, I vote aye.
Thank you, ma'am. Members, have you all voted? Senator Pace, how do you vote? Senator Pace.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise to explain my vote.
Please do.
Thank you. I was just trying to confirm with Sunny who was going next, or the senator from District 5. Members, this has been a very long evening for me last night and this morning, working on 2 different amendments for House Bill 2190. In fact, I just got a text message from someone who said, "Why are you opposed to the PACE bill or the PACE amendment?" And I'm like, I wrote it. But I want to talk about, because it was brought up, the amendment that was not offered and why that affects my vote today. The PACE number 1 floor amendment, which was referenced by another senator today, there is only one difference. I have the comparison here between the PACE number 2 amendment and the PACE number 1 amendment. The difference is the PACE floor amendment number 1 removes the prohibition on businesses and accompanying penalties. So it takes what we have today in this version right now, and it would remove the prohibition on businesses and accompanying penalties. It would leave everything else and in the included exemptions. And so therefore, the one we have before us has those penalties as well as the prohibitions. I wanted to take a moment and thank Senator Livingston, or Senator for District 22, who spent a significant amount of time on the base of this amendment. The PACE floor amendment number 2, which was adopted, was based off of his hard work on getting an amendment, and then we made some tweaks to it, and unfortunately, we couldn't adopt his and then do an amendment to adopt the changes from his, and so I did want to acknowledge that, as well as the senator, let's see if I did this right, Senator for District 8, who he and I visited significantly about the PACE number 1 and number 2 floor amendments and what we would do to resolve some of his concerns. And then, of course, the sponsor of this bill, who I spent much time with, and I appreciate that he came to an agreement with me on the PACE number 2 amendment. And one of the things that the number 2 amendment that was adopted on this bill does, that I think is very, very important, is it does, it clarifies some of the things that the governor's executive order doesn't. One of which is whether the universities fall under this piece, what exemptions are there for healthcare organizations, and how far does that expand to in privately owned practices, et cetera. And then it puts some sort of penalty system in there to keep people on track. However, I will say that I was supportive of both the PACE number 1 and number 2 amendments, but I will be voting for this bill as amended today, House Bill 2190, and I do vote aye.
Senator Borelli.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I rise to explain my vote.
Please do.
Thank you, Madam President. As you can see, members up on the board is agreeing. I'm yes. But I'm looking at the no votes on here, and it's very troubling. It's a very troubling signal. We have a Constitution, the 4th Amendment, give rights to persons. The right of the people to secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects, well, persons. It means your body. The government should have no right to interfere with someone's forcing somebody to get a vaccine. We've heard, show me your papers. I've got teachers in my district, K-12 and university and community college, and students that do not want to get the vaccine, that, by the way, has, I've been told, killed lab animals, hasn't been truly fully safe, still in the experimental stages. We're all being used as guinea pigs, unfortunately. Now, I didn't have a choice when I was in the Marines, because we had to get anthrax shots, vaccines, because we were possibly going into an area, an AO, where anthrax was going to be used on the troops. That wasn't approved by the FDA. But I made that choice. I was in the service. And I took that oath that I knew that I someday might cost me my life. But to force somebody to take a vaccine that has a 99.567 on a survival rate, and the average age of death is 76 years old, and to force that onto the healthy is appalling. You've heard, show me your papers. What's next? Star of David? Scarlet Letter? This crosses party lines, folks. I have Democrats in my district, believe it or not, that do not want to be mandated that they have to have a vaccine passport to be employed, to be educated, to shop, and then to enlist business, the private industry, to do the bidding of the government of leverage and power is fascistic. Where do we draw that line? It's good to see some of you here that aren't wearing masks. It's good to see your faces again. But where do we draw that line? We're here to protect the people and protect their rights as a free society to make your own choices, to move freely about the country. We have 50 individual states, lower 48, and you don't need to have papers to move from one state to another. In the Soviet bloc country, you heard from Senator Leach, you can't move around without those papers. I urge you to please, someone flip here. And for the only reason why I would be, Madam President, I'm going to flip to a red, is so that way for reconsideration. I stand with this bill, not the amendments, they were proposed. Nothing is perfect. It's written on paper. We can change things. And I hate to throw away good for perfect, but we need to have something so a free people can move around, go do their shopping. As Christians, we've read the book of Revelations. The mark of the beast. You don't have the mark of the beast, you can't work, you can't go get anything. I will not cave to the mark of the beast. If I can't travel because I have to have a vaccine passport that's going to supersede my U.S. passport, I guess I'm staying here. I love Arizona anyway. And you all should come out to Lake Havasu City, which seems to be the last bastion of freedom in the state. With that, Madam President, for the sole purposes of bringing this back for reconsideration, I'm changing my vote to nay.
Thank you. Senator Peshlikai?
Thank you, Madam President. I wish to explain my vote.
Please do.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, all the arguments for the folks that are speaking, voting for this bill, this is exactly the same arguments that I had regarding requiring our voters to send in their documents when they wanted to vote. And so it's really, I think, hypocritical of folks to say this on this bill when that was forced through here against the will of many of our constituents. And then also, the reality is the government has been doing this for hundreds of years, and my people were put on forced marches and vaccinated and everything. And so everything has been unjust. It just depends on which side of the aisle that you're sitting on, depending on the issue on the board. And so it's just, to me, really aggravating that folks can do this in the same legislative body that we just voted for, making people show their papers just to vote. So I just want to say that and explain my vote, and I vote no.
Thank you, ma'am. With that, the system is now closed. Secretary will now record the action by a vote of 13 ayes, 16 nays, 1 not voting. You have failed to pass House Bill 2190.